This 11th of October.
I'm just waiting for some
5 minutes past 8 p.m. Just got dark outside in the last 20 minutes. And we got a picture. It's a bit windy outside, so don't have a lot of expectations that the wind is going to drop off much. So I thought I'd just grab a few snapshots. This is the first images this month. There's what is the top at the moment, but it hasn't swung around yet. It's actually about almost it's almost at its apex or zenith in the sky at the moment. See the seas over on the left hand side there, and there's the cocoa pop end. We don't quite have any Tyco in view tonight. There's the shadow line, as you can see. Let's see now, is it straight up and down? Not really. It's going to come around a lot. It'll spin around past straight up and down to that there Copernicus, which is kind of, well, actually, if you go over to Plato, which is out of view now at the moment, let's bring it back. There's Plato down the bottom there. Plato's normally at the bottom on the right hand side, so this is going to swing around a whole lot. I do have a bit of colour up there at the moment, which is making things look a bit weird. Need the Apennines there. It's not a great picture. I can't really get. It looks like it's out of focus, but in fact, there's been a lot of aerial activity and stratospheric. What would you call it? Sky dust up there. Now I was just watching a YouTube channel called the. Let's see what we got here. Battlefield Over Earth, Part 1. It's called Project Ascension. This guy's an ex-NASA guy who reckons that, there are aliens and many kinds, and, they're having battles, and we've got a secret space program who are now actually fighting, who does he reckon? Dracos, which are some kind of lizard alien that he reckons exists. The thing that pricked my ears up was that I haven't seen him talk about this space battle thing. It's actually going on in Earth's atmosphere, because he's got a picture of the space station. He says it's a space station feed, that there are multiple cameras, but they don't show you all the cameras. But supposedly this guy's got, he's a hacker, and he has a lot of addresses and entry into places that other people don't have. And generally speaking, people who understand the technology and know the systems can do this. It's just too technical for the average person. It doesn't know how the internet's constructed. But anyway, he reckons he can access this. These cameras, which at the moment are just poking on, because the space station's in this footage is passing over the dark side, which it does every hour or so, 40 minutes or so, I think. It's just virtually a black screen, but there's all these flashes and little things moving around, which he claims is a battle going on in our upper atmosphere, and he's actually pointed out a couple of bright objects, which he says are satellites. Now, I've never seen a plane or a satellite on the official feed from the space station. I don't think there's ever been. I've certainly never seen any. I mean, I spent a lot of hours watching it, but what I haven't done is troll through hours of other people's snapshots of various time frames of this. But to my knowledge, there's never been a plane spotted or a satellite, which to me is absurd. It's only it's only about, I think it's 200 kilometres up, and most satellites, there's satellites within that region, and certainly planes should be visible in the daylight. You should see some flashes, even if they're very small. You still should see reflections from shiny white planes, and I've never seen it, never heard it mentioned ever in a. This is why I'm dubious of all of the live feed footage that NASA shows with its fisheye lens, which you can clearly see it's fisheye because everything's distorted. The bits of the space station that are poking out. If you stick a ruler up against, say, the panels they've got there, which are supposedly heat dispersing panels for the cooling system in there, and solar panels as well, I believe. And those things are square, rectangular, straight lines basically, and there aren't any. If you put a ruler up, so it's obviously not only is the horizon distorted into a curved shape, but so are most things. Interestingly, if you test that, you'll see that you're not seeing the whole of the camera image because the distortion is not symmetrical. You're not in the middle of the field, basically, and you can tell that by how what area of the picture is distorted and what isn't much. So anyway, it looks like we're underwater now. Now that's actually normally a heat effect. I've heard it described by other moon channels as the jet stream, supposedly. Although, I actually don't know what he was talking about. This is Space Channel Keith or something, because supposedly the jet stream is up there everywhere. It's just an elevation above the Earth where the air is moving in a very fast velocity compared to the ground, supposedly in accordance with the spinning of the Earth, I guess. I think he was saying, that's probably where we get this idea from, it's a jet stream, is that it's more prominent over the equator, and when the moon passes over this area, you get more of a watery effect, which is not really consistent with my observations. I mean, it's certainly there it is now. Well, it's just about straight up and down. It's looked fairly watery. But I've had a fairly rock solid in this state as well, so whatever causes this effect in the atmosphere, it's something that's not constant. It changes from day to day and from hour to hour and from elevation point in the sky. So that's probably the most interesting segment to look at. We've got Copernicus on the right-hand side up above that. I can't remember those two craters. Then to the left of that, we've got Eratosthenes, which is kind of at the end of that mountain range there, which is the Apennine mountain range. We've got Mount Huygens, Ampere, Mons Bradley, one of the Apollo landing missions apparently went down there, and below that the Three Stooges. We've got Archimedes, which is a big one, Aristillus and Autolycus, which are kind of in this debris field. There's these huge holes there up against that mountain range. Objects on the floor of that sea. The elevation of that, don't really know. probably these seas are kilometres lower than the what they call the upper highlands of the moon, which is basically up here. If we have a look, up here, this up here, which I'll call the cocoa pop end, is higher in elevation compared to the rest. So there's been some landscaping happen up there, probably through electrical activity, volcanic activity. Volcanism was always the theory about what formed all of these features, that and the meteor impacts. But I remember reading a geological report of Apollo, what was it, 15, I believe, landed up just above Sea of Serenity over on the left-hand side there. Let me come up. That sea there, left of centre. So just to the right of that, Apollo 15 landed in there, took a lot of samples of the rock, expecting to find igneous volcanic type rock, and they didn't find any. There's no indication of any volcanism up there. I haven't read any reports of the lower areas in the seas, but there's more weight to the idea that these things are not formed by our traditional geological explanations for geological features on Earth. Probably aren't even right for Earth, and they're certainly not right for the Moon because of the lack of atmosphere and their lack of weather. Basically, the features aren't eroded or deformed. They're pretty much like the way they were when they were created, whenever that was. And some of them have perhaps been created by impacts, but most of these round objects you're looking at are like sinkholes on Earth. They don't come from collisions. They don't come from volcanic activity. They supposedly are formed by water and gas on Earth, although you don't ever see any geysers flowing out of these things. They just form. Why they form on Earth, I haven't read a decent explanation. It seems to me that there's expansion going on in the Earth's surface and the crust, and that's what forms these circular holes. Or it could be the movement of material underneath the surface, but not a lot happens on the Moon. Well, it's hard to tell anyway. Certainly there's no study of it at a public level anymore. There are lots of people publicly, selenographers who are employed. There were thousands of them up to about 96, where they all lost their jobs and basically went into dark projects, I'd say. So I don't think the scientific exploration of the Moon has not stopped, but it's gone out of the public eye, and they tend to focus on probes they send to other planets, pictures of Pluto and Venus, and the moons around Jupiter and Ganymede and Europa, and there's 60 moons around Jupiter. There's supposedly there are anyway, they focus on all that stuff, but I'm pretty sure that there's a hell of a lot more known about this thing we're looking at here than what we currently has available, which are just kind of pretty bad pictures from the Apollo missions. All the telemetry's been lost, all of the actual video footage. They actually took a colour video camera. They had this in '69. Full colour video camera to the Moon. All we ever saw was black and white images, which were actually filmed by TV crews off the screens in the mission control. And when asked in the preceding years after the launch, when people came back and asked for the original footage, been denied up to a point where then they said that it was all gone and it had been lost by the contractors and they didn't have it anymore, which if you believe that, you believe anything really. They certainly have high quality colour images of wherever they were when they did that Apollo mission. But we don't get to see them. They have got 4, I believe there's 4 NASA-owned maybe that's all together. There's at least 4 probes orbiting the moon and mapping it constantly, and have been for years. I've got one called the Low Orbit Imaging Satellite, which I use in my virtual moon atlas. That's how I actually learnt the topography and the geology of the named objects, mountains, seas, craters. What little I know, that's where I learn it from. It's very actually difficult. If you go to Google Moon, if you go to any other imaging programs to look at the moon, Google probably provides the closest thing to the moon atlas, although not as good, and it's completely distorted. The size of it's incorrect, like the viewable size of it is what you can see is totally wrong. It's the same with Google Earth. It's not consistent with any of the globe models you see. It actually makes it look much smaller, like you're looking through this round hole at a flat picture, basically, which they move around on, which is really weird. You think they'd be able to get the size of it consistent. But if you look at the moon, there's actually no picture. There's no information about any of the crater names or the features. It's just not there. Even though it is named in Latin, and most people don't speak Latin, it's fairly obvious who there's, Aristillus and Poseidonus and Kepler and Copernicus. These were all famous scientists, and people that studied the moon. They named these objects they discovered after themselves. And this is all back 200 years ago, when Latin was the language of description used in science. Interestingly, the other side of the moon that we don't get to see is mainly mapped out by Russians, so all features there have Russian names, not Latin names. But I don't know that unseen side at all. I don't study it. I haven't. In passing, I've seen. But I don't know any of the features, and I would get lost if I zoomed in and tried to look at it. Whereas I've studied this side of the moon so intensively with the moon atlas that I can usually work out where I am. So that's just such a fuzzy picture. It's holding its lock fairly well tonight. I managed to get the thing oriented. The actual the base the telescope is sitting on has to be pointing basically due north, and it has to be perfectly flat. Now I have a system of so bubble guides, levelers, and I've also got the direction of north mapped out, drawn on the ground in various places, so I can set my scope up. I have to pull it down and set it up every day, and I do it pretty quickly. Sometimes I get a bit wrong, so it's when I put on the star guide system, the go-to system, it kind of slides off slowly, drifts off the moon. Oh, actually, I think we can actually see the runway up to Tyco there. Let's see, just come down a bit. Tyco. There it is. Well, there's Tyco up the top there. Under Tycho, and the area under Tycho, that's C under there, is it cognitum? Consciousness? I think that's down below. That one's, I can't remember what that one is, but some very, very deep holes, and as you can see, there's some kind of interesting lights coming out of those deep areas, and I've zoomed in there on nights with more clarity. I'll just bump the colour down and we'll see if there's anything. There's a kind of bluey, there's these weird bluey red kind of lights come out of those deep dark areas down in here. Let's go for a zoom in. Down in there. Just send it up a bit, go up a bit. little bit ripply, and as you can see, that kind of noise sort of effect is atmospheric sky dust, stratospheric. It's very high, it's very milky, and it turns the sky white, basically. And as dust comes on, it appears to clear, but it's not. It's just not being illuminated by the sun when the sun passes over the horizon. So sometimes the moon just looks like you're looking at it through a silk screen or something. It's clearly you're looking through a soup. Tonight it did look, to my eyes, which are pretty bad. I can only see peripherally out the side, but it looked fairly sharp to me, but obviously it's not, because there's a lot of noise there, stopping us from getting anything that looks like a sharp focus. But I really like that area there, left of centre, and actually the area in the centre there, which has just got this glow coming out of it. If you zoom way, way down in there, which I've done before, with a Barlow on, now that's maximum zoom here at the moment. Don't go any further. If I push some gain into there, that's introduced some noise. Let's just leave it there. See now, yeah, that's the spot there. Now I don't know what that region's called, just to the right of centre, with the blue and the orange glow coming out of it, and a fair bit of noise associated with that. They're quite prominent. Deep crater above it. Oh, damn that. Damn you, noise and wind. Anyway, there it is. It's ooh, we don't like that. That's full colour, so we'll just knock that back a bit so it doesn't look so awful in the edges. And Tyco, you fiend. And under Tyco, we can see Euclides mountain range just coming into the view, just below centre there on the right hand side. It's that weird sort of crisscross shaped lot of mountains there, which actually looks like a hand with the palm up, Tansau hand. Sometimes it doesn't look like that tonight, but that's Euclides mountains, Mons, Euclides, with those two craters I can't remember the name of, and then Copernicus. So we might come back to this in a while. Let's just open up the recording setting. It's 8:26, so that's about half an hour of footage. On Tuesday, the 11th of October, Rocktober, we call it, down here in the high side of the earth. See you in half an hour. They're so fast. 8 minutes past 9 p.m, 11th of October. And it's going that way. A big family of baboons. We've surrounded them in this forest here. Still fairly windy outside. In the heat of the chase, I've become separated. I've lost the hut. I'm on my own now. It's not just baboons I need to be wary of. The land is also home to lions, leopards, and poisonous snakes. I just heard some music over there. It's just about straight up and down the shadow line. Yep. There's the Cocoa Pop in. And It's past the zenith now, but it's just about, let's see now. Yep, that's straight up and down, starting to roll over. Plato there at the bottom is almost in its, what I would call its normal position, bottom right hand side. Although there is no normal position because the moon rotates constantly, following the illumination of the sun as the sun moves around, which is very strange. And not only does it spin to show one side to the earth, but it also rotates so that it's always lit from the same aspect as the moon, as the sun, well, as the earth rotates, but from on the ground it looks like the sun's going around, and the moon tracks that. So in fact, we're moving, the moon is moving, and the sun isn't. According to the heliocentric model that we subscribe to in consensus science. When I say we, I'm talking about, the television, Discovery Channel, and people who study black holes and dark matter. People who believe that the speed of light is a constant and that space is expanding. People who subscribe to the Big Bang Theory, which is basically the not all professional scientific folk who study astronomy subscribe to these notions, but that's the way it's portrayed in the media and in popular science by the exponents of science in the popular arena. Any other theories or ideas are rejected as being superseded by our current fact-based understanding. But once again, it's a house of cards built on assumptions like the redshift concept, where they get their idea of distance from when it comes to a lot of bodies in the heavens. Their belief that stars go red when they get old and explode. Once again, this is just a theory. There are a phenomenon called supernova, which are very basically bright flashes and massive bursts of energy in the form of light of different various wavelengths, X-rays, gamma rays, visible light, infrared, the whole spectrum. Now, the current consensus idea is that these flashes are caused simply by the explosion of stars which have run out of fuel, because their model is that all stars are nuclear furnaces burning up hydrogen. Theory's got a lot of problems. A lot of evidence doesn't support it, and the electric model does not have a nuclear furnace in the center of stars. The actual source of energy comes from externally. It comes through the circuit that the star is embedded in. The vacuum or void of space is not a vacuum at all. It's full of plasma, at least hydrogen, and basically almost every element known to man is floating around there in space. There are clouds of alcohol that are light years across. There's dust of every kind of variety in clusters. There is a lot of very diffuse, basically just monatomic hydrogen or protons, which is a building block of all known matter, is the proton. And there seems to be a part of, in my concept of space, there's no space without matter in it. And at this most fundamental level, it's the proton, or what we call a hydrogen nucleus in chemistry. And that stuff's everywhere. So, it seems to be settling down a little bit wind-wise out there. There's also not too much water in. Let's just zoom in there. I'm not sure, but it actually might be clearing up a little bit. Have a look. It's the wind. Let's see now. Wow, that's full zoom. Copernicus there at the bottom. Deep holes up the top there. Wow, look at that thing sitting up there. What a weird looking. It's all busted up there. But because of supposedly, if this is the curvy end there, we're actually looking at a lot of land at a low elevation. So it's hard to tell what some of these things, the shapes of these things are. It's kind of a side-on view. That's why that weird-looking object on the edge there is interesting, because it's could be a trick of the shadows, but looks like a round thing sitting on top of a pillar. But full zoom, we're not going to get any closer, and we can't really see. Oh, what was that down there? Actually, on that rim. Let's go up a bit. Not much to see along here. About down here. Oh, hello. Aristarchus will be coming into view tomorrow, the next day. This is the bottom of I can't remember what that mountain range is called now down there. There's that thing again. A ball on a stick. I bet you tomorrow there won't even be. There'll be nothing to see there. Man, look at the activity around the outside of that. Round, circular, pyroclastic sort of flat floor with craters all around the outside. Oh, and in the middle. This is the weird thing about big craters on the moon, is there's always big craters over little craters. You'll never find a small crater that has been overlapped by a large crater. There just aren't any. Now, if these were caused by impacts, why is it that all the big impacts happen first and then all the little ones happen later? And never, ever do you see a large crater intercepting a small one. This seems to tell me is that these things were created at the same time, with the small craters at the end of the process. If it was an electrical arc that caused it, it was sort of jumps around. This is why you have sort of runs of craters in straight lines as well. It's consistent with electrical arcing moving along the surface. Did see an object pass by before. It was a bird, though. It was rather large and moving very quickly. Transversed the entire screen in probably about a second, maybe less than a second. So that is, I'd say it was a bird. Well, it's 9:22. I'll be back in a while. 11th of October, 2016. Well, it is 9:48 p.m., 11th of October. We're going to take a run up the shadow line now. Ooh, come on. You can do it. Moon's starting to roll over now. There's the pointy end. Tyco just in view tonight. This is the first pictures of this phase of the moon. It's been stratospheric stardust has obscured the night sky the last 4 or 5 days. There's been a lot of jet trails in the daytime and milky skies, which hasn't happened for about the last 2 months. I in fact thought they'd given up doing it, but whatever is the reason why this happens, it only happens at certain times. And it seems to correlate with these trails. I've taken pictures of the last couple of days. I keep watch because I actually work at a desk that's looking straight north into the sky. So I'm kind of constantly during the days kind of glancing up to see, look at whether there's clouds, to know whether there's going to be any moon visibility, and I often catch these. Well, there's always planes. Put it this way, I live right next to an airport, so there are always commercial jets. None of them ever leave any kind of vapor. I've never seen a vapor trail from a commercial jet. What I do see is jets flying at a much higher altitude, and I've got pictures of these things, and they're not domestic people carrying type planes. They are McDonnell Douglas MD-80s and 727s, which produce trails in the sky. What these trails are, I don't pretend to know what their constituent particulate matter is, but they are certainly do not disappear. They go from horizon to horizon. Usually they come from the from the north, and fly due south over the city. It's usually always in that direction, and usually when there's a high pressure system and not a lot of natural cloud around. There is a lot of wind at the moment, but there's an awful lot of the Antarctic hexagon of low pressure systems that cycles around constantly at the South Pole is very active at the moment, and it's generating an awful lot of wind. In fact, we had all the power, high tension power transmission lines in South Australia, which is down the bottom of the country, were blown over about a week ago, and they had statewide power blackouts caused by these winds. Interestingly, I didn't see any reports relating to the wind. It was really more about they were blaming alternate power industry and solar power for creating these blackouts, which is obviously had nothing to do with it. When you look at the devastation of these blown over A-frame high voltage towers. It looked like a giant has run through and just bent them all over. So it was some pretty serious wind, if not a total erosion of the infrastructure, which is probably a factor in it as well. We've privatised a lot of our power industry in this country over the last 10 years. And as a subsequence, the maintenance has gone down the drain hole, basically. There's power companies just wanting to make money and not do anything about maintaining or upgrading their transmission lines. In fact, I suspect the same things without a doubt, the same thing's happening here as is happening in America. In the people who are running these power companies actually don't even understand the it's a fairly complicated thing. It might seem simple running power along wires, but when you're talking about the high voltages and the multi-phase power systems that they put in, and how these things have got to be set up to work efficiently without causing explosion or detonation or a breakdown of the system. All this stuff's been forgotten, so the people maintaining the systems don't even know how they work. I know this is happening in states in America but it's mystified people who actually understand electricity and the transmission of electricity for use of industry and domestic use. Not many people really understand the beast within these systems these days. However, all these power systems running through wires were all designed a very long time ago, a couple of 100 years ago, and we haven't changed much since then. I suspect the reasons why they haven't buried a lot of these power lines is because they function better when they're suspended in the atmosphere, and in fact they actually pick up a lot of atmospheric power. In fact, it causes them a lot of problems. The amount of power that's picked up, they're not actually generated by them. There are huge impulses that move throughout the transmission system, which have to be controlled and which are potentially catastrophic and these things are all subject to not only the weather and wind, but also the environment outside of our atmosphere. In fact, it's been long known that the planetary orbits and the phases of the various planets have an effect on our power system, which has always been understood. Well, it was understood by the people that built ever since the telegraph and the Carrington event. They've known about this. They had to. They had to build in safeguards into power switches and power stations to alleviate the surges that are generated. Anyway, it's still windy outside, and 9:30. I'm going to call it quits for tonight. I'm going to get an early night, hoping for clear skies and a lack of wind tomorrow, although I think I'll be lucky. Let's see if this, let's just look at this object up the top again before we go. We'll zoom in and see. I suspect this thing is going to be gone. There it is, right over on the right hand side there. It's really not very clear. There it is. It looks like my web camera. My Logitech Sphere web camera looks kind of like that. A little dome sitting on a stalk. Sitting on a kind of pillar.
Blue sky, I'm just waiting for some blue sky, blue sky. Blue sky, blue sky.
Signing out from Long Bay, Australia. See you tomorrow. Matey, stop.